What if everything you thought and believed about successful buying, selling, and financing your home was wrong? Welcome to HomeWise with Michael Midget. This is where you can count on straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home. Whether it's buying, selling, or financing, even maintaining and growing its value along the way. Coming to you from the NewsTalkSTL studios at Union Station in St. Louis.
Welcome to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the creator and host of HomeWise, Michael Midget. If this is your first time joining us for the show, welcome aboard. We're glad you're here. And Michael, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, Stal. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks.
So, you have a good week?
Very good week. Yeah, really enjoying the decent weather that we've had for the last week or so.
New cycle for you guys here.
It's almost like living in San Diego. If it was like this all the time, I would move here.
Right. So, big show today. Well, it's always a big show, isn't it?
It is.
And everybody always says, oh, it's going to be a big show today. It's like, well, if it's not going to be a big show, why do the show, right? It's always got to be bigger, bigger, and bigger. That's the world we live in today. But today, that is true. We are going to deliver on that. So today, right here on this show, over the next hour or so, we're going to solve a problem. Really going to solve a problem, okay? For real.
Okay.
I have not heard this problem solved anywhere before, like for real, like really solve it. I mean, you'll hear talked about, you'll hear some ideas kicked around and things like that. We're actually going to solve a problem.
So this is groundbreaking.
I think so.
Okay.
It's something I've done for years and years and years, but we haven't actually talked about it on the show before. It's going to be some, a little bit of new ground. Maybe we might even splinter off in a new direction a bit, moving forward on it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right.
When I do these shows, so, little behind the scenes here, we do prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Prepare. So, it's not scripted, but there's an outline. I have an idea of what we're going to talk about, generally how we're going to go about it. Otherwise, we would never be able to stay on track or stay on time. So, I do prep work, right? And then we actually do the show. And then afterwards, I think back and I kind of revisit, it's just me. So but I go back through what I did. And, did I cover everything? How did I cover it? What new ideas came out of it? Because there's an impromptu aspect to this. It's not, like I said, it's not scripted. It's planned, but, ideas just pop into your head. And sometimes those ideas are a function of the situation or the environment that you're in. All right. So I can sit around here all day and I can think about this, but I'll have the TV on in the background and something will pop up on that'll catch my attention that relates to what I'm talking about in some way, or I'll be able to draw a parallel. Right. So I listen to Fox Business News during the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch it. I listen to it. It's on in the background. It's, like the TV off to the side that, once you get used to it being there, you don't really notice, but you kind of pick it up. And so as things come up, you kind of gravitate or latch onto things. And so while I'm working on this, I might hear things on that, draw parallels. There's lots going on right now. So that's sometimes when you hear wow, he pulled that, you're like, how did that happen? I mean, sometimes it just happens like right on the spot. So sometimes it's planned, other times it's not planned. So I go back and I revisit and I look and I'll kind of, if there was something I liked that seemed to work, I might make a note to myself and incorporate that into the core foundational idea so that in the future when I talk about it or go over that subject, I may write an article on it. I may do an interview on another station, on another show, or just present the material again at some point in the future. What I'm talking about today is something that was presented or thunk up, days ago, weeks ago, months ago, possibly even years ago, in some cases even decades ago. So what we're going to do today, this is an example of something that I've been doing since 1994.
Mm-hmm.
When I first figured it out. I got into the business in 1992. which was the beginnings of, if you turn around and look back in the rearview mirror, you can see that we were at the beginnings or near the beginnings of the bond supercycle. What is the bond supercycle? Bond supercycle is when rates were up here and now they've come down here, not in a straight line, but when you look at the general trend, it's clearly down, right? Rates decreasing over time. So since the early 80s, I got into it in the early 90s. When you get into it in the beginning, you're like, oh my gosh, I just lost 10 years. I missed 10 years. I missed it. And then you turn around and you look back 30 years and you're like, oh, I didn't miss it. I got all of it. Mm-hmm. Now we are, in the depths of the pandemic when the 10-year treasury got down to, effectively it was zero, but technically it was a quarter percent. So,
so 0.25?
Yeah, 0.25. And it's on a range, but that's about as low as it can go because theoretically, you can't value capital at zero. Once you do, all hell breaks loose. Supposed to. All right. So, this is something that in 1994 was one of those, you zoom in on that super cycle, you'll see a jagged thing, but rates had really gone up. And the business that I was running, I was working for somebody else at that time, but business dried up overnight. Like we left work on Friday, came back on Monday, and the world was dramatically different, as it often is in mortgage lending. You live and die by interest rates. That was my cue to, hey, I can't live and die by interest rates. Fortunately, in order to be successful and to do well, you can build strategies that aren't interest rate centric, although interest rates do drive some of the things that happen inside of strategies. And so, rates go up and down over time, but that market there, it was short-lived, about 6 months to a year. We're going on, when we get to the end of this year, we'll be through 2 years of this tough market because of how low we got in the depths of the pandemic, which was an artificially low market. Rates should never be down that low. Not our bond, not the U.S. bonds. It's, the backbone of global commerce and all that. They should not be that low. So that creates lots of problems. The reason to get into all this is because it creates problems, right? So how do we really solve those problems, right? So guess what? Inflation, there's that word again, right? It pops up all the time. Cost of things going up. It's squeezing everybody at all price points across all socioeconomic, levels, places, groups, everyday household costs, food, utilities, taxes, real estate taxes. You get your real estate tax. You get your real estate tax bill, not the bill, but the warning for the bill. Right? They send the warning out. The thing that says this is not a bill, but it's going to be a bill when we get to the end of the year. Holy moly! Right now, it wasn't unexpected, right? Because property value's been going up. We know that every other year your house is supposed to get reassessed. And so, you're just kind of like waiting for it, but you're hoping, maybe I'll get unlucky or lucky, depending on how you look at it. They'll pick a couple, because they're not the most scientific way to pick houses, and if you don't agree with what they've picked, you can appeal it. Good luck with that.
That's a huge headache.
By the way.
Yeah,
I did it once. And I knew what I was doing. Like I got an appraiser friend, like, hey, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what we got. What do you think? Like, okay, go down there, do this, do that. Here's your 3 comps. Here's what you say to them or whatever. I don't know if the process has changed, but you have to go there first off. So it's not like you don't get to submit it online. It's not like click, done. It's sign up, register, go sit in a room with 1,000 other people, and they call it's kind of like going to sit for jury duty, almost, right? It's not exactly a pleasant experience. It was in the gym. I don't remember. It was in a big room, might have been the gymnasium of a school or something, but there was like hundreds of people just sitting around in uncomfortable folding chairs. And you'd go up to another table that was some folding chairs and two regular like looking people in street clothes. And, like, okay, what are you here for? Like, what do you think I'm here for? It's like, same thing everybody. All right, well, we got to ask you that. All right, well, here's the stuff. Like, well, not just give me this. Take all your stuff back and you want to touch it. Like, I don't get this. Like, there could be a better way to do this. I guess they make it hard on purpose, but this isn't to discourage anybody from doing it, but it's just going with your eyes open. Don't wait till the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think that, it's definitely worth looking into, because mine went up 20%. That's a big number. So if you were at 3,000, you might be around 35, 36, 37,000. If you're around 4,000, you might be around 5,000 now, 20, 25%, depending on where you live, what your previous assessment was. So, that personal property, I haven't seen it yet, but it's probably going to go up too, just because the price of everything is going up. That's what inflation means. Right? So not just the cost of the things that we're buying, but the costs of the things that we own also, right? So if you own a business and you sell things, you've probably raised your prices.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you probably raise your prices over time ordinarily, because there's always a little bit of inflation. And as time goes on, the cost of business probably generally goes up. Always seems to be the trend for me anyway. And, the creep, like the expense creep, if you're not diligent and like really on it, they get out of control if you don't pay attention. Happens in businesses, happens in households.
Normally it's a creep, but over the last couple of years, it feels like it's been a leap as opposed to a creep at times where all of a sudden, whoa, what happened there?
Because normally inflation is creeping along, and and they say the target 2%, like, 2%, that's not very high. It doesn't sound very high, but I mean, it adds up over time. It's the cooking of the frog, right? Sorry for the frog lovers out there, but that everybody knows what I mean when I say that. So it's a real thing. All right, insurance, right? Well, guess what? I'm dealing with this firsthand now, right? So even though I'm doing everything right, I'm shopping, I'm doing, I've got the right people, I'm doing everything the way you're supposed to, there is that, the rising tide raises all ships effect. Well, that's good for the insurance company, not good for, if you're the one that has to pay. So on the ends of all this, there's the give and take. You find yourself on both ends of this thing. Depending on, it just depends on what your perspective is. And another place this happens is in debt payments, right? So inflation, the cost of things we're buying is going up. The interest rate on the things that we're buying is also going up. So when it comes to debt, it's a double whammy, right? Just like in the housing market, double whammy. Affordability down, it's in the toilet. Least or lowest affordability all time since they started tracking the thing. Clearly within the last 20 years, when you look at a chart, why is that? Well, rates aren't all that high, although they're higher than they have been. They're not historically high. They're not historically high even in a sense of where they've been in recent last couple of decades, like modern times. We are dealing with both ends of the spectrum here, right? So housing prices going up because of the supply demand. People don't want to move. People don't want to sell. People who move or need to move, or people that want to buy, there isn't enough to buy supply, so that's raises prices, right? Econ 101. Very simple microeconomic kind of stuff. It's what our capitalist system is built on, right? It's the thing that pays for all the other things that go on in the world. But affordability is in the toilet right now for that, because prices on what you're buying is higher. Rates are higher than they have been, so that you don't have the corresponding increase in wage growth. That creates a problem. All right. So today, right, so we've danced around this. I've given some ways to combat it, some solutions, things to do. But today we're going to go straight into the belly of the beast. All right. So let's take a look at this. Let's put some real numbers to it before we cut, and then when we get back to the second segment, we will dig in more. But let me just leave you with this, right? So let's look at. I thought the best way to look at this would be affordability today, right? So it's down low in the toilet compared to, gosh, I wish I would have bought a year ago. I wish I would have bought 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I split the difference on this. And, if I would have just had the whatever. Okay, well, let's go back and look at what your purchase would look like if you could get that lower interest rate. Okay, even though you can't, right? But let's take a look and see what it would look like. So I used the average sale price for St. Charles County last time I looked a week or so ago, right at $400,000. All right. Let's use 20% down payment because it'll keep the numbers simpler. So that gives you a $320,000 loan. I went into my shopping app thing that I've got, where I've got the retail outlets, the 5 or 6 of them that I regularly check just to compare my pricing. So I already know I'm going to be better. I just want to know how much better I'm going to be so I can actually put numbers to this stuff. Because it doesn't, a rate, it's talking about rates don't matter all that much, not to the degree they look like they matter when if you're looking at the price tag of something. Okay. But, the one I usually go to, we'll just call them Stagecoach Mortgage. $320,000. Their website said this past week, I think it was Tuesday night when I looked at the 6.5%. APR and that would be 6.699 for 30 years. Would give you a monthly payment of $2,022. It's just principal and interest. Taxes and insurance aren't going to matter. They're going to be the same no matter what. So strip those out, make this simple. All right. So me on those exact same terms, so when they're playing right, you're quoting all the terms with that. So how much down payment, what credit score, and all those kinds of things. Comparably speaking, I'd be a 6% even, right? 6.148 on the APR. Same loan amount, same 30-year term. My payment would be $1,918 or about $100 less, right? So for a 0.5% in the interest rate, sounds Herculean, like a huge jump, right? Huge jump on the payment, that is enough for somebody to make a decision on, right? But when we compare that to what we could have gotten last year, and I just guess, I think a year and a half ago, you still could have gotten a 3. 1 year ago, you could have gotten 5. So somewhere in between those two extremes, depending on, it wasn't January I bought, it was February, or it wasn't June that I closed, it was May. And so, you're locking in March. And so I just took 4%. Right. So I wanted a rate that was lower you can get today, because remember last week I said the lowest you could possibly get was 5, and the amount of points you'd have to pay to get that, you probably wouldn't want to pay them. So 4 is completely off the table, no matter even if you went crazy. All right. 4%, same loan amount, 320, 30-year term, 1528 on the payment. And since it's a hypothetical interest rate that I just pull out of the air for comparison purposes, I don't have an APR on that. Can't get it anyway. Can't get any of these. They were earlier in the week. But so affordability in this case, I'm going to assign that right at $1,500 a month on this payment. So it's $500 less than generally the best you could get if you went out and shopped. It's going to be $400 lower than where I can get you to under normal, ordinary circumstances. All right. So $400, that's a pretty big chunk.
Sure is.
Right? So if I say $1,500 versus $1,900, that's going to make a difference to you, right? I can tell you from experience, it makes a difference to a lot of people. $100, sometimes $50 makes a big difference to some people. So those are the numbers we're going to work with. All right, let's go to break. We come back. We're going to dig into this. And I'm going to peel it. I'm going to give you a way to turn that and make that affordable. Okay?
You're listening to HomeWise. That's Michael Midget. I'm Stal Ponticus. We'll take a quick break and join you again in just a couple minutes. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus, and I'm here with the host and creator of the show, Michael Midget. Michael, continue your conversation because we're getting into some interesting stuff here, including stats that are interesting.
Yep, statistics are always good. You don't always get those on the radio, and they present a unique problem because, you start throwing numbers around, and I have the benefit of working with numbers all day, so I already know what these numbers mean, and I don't really have to think about them too hard. I just need to make sure I have everything straight in my head. Plus, I have the benefit of having worked through some of them on ahead of time, right, in that pre-planning phase that we talked about, and then I wrote them down. Right, so you see me looking down, I'm referring to notes so that I can keep everything straight. But you, listener, have the ability to hit pause on me and rewind and go back. So if you're watching the podcast, if you're watching us on video on Facebook, by the way, HomeWiseRadio.com, newly redesigned. It's prettier now, okay? I mean, all the same stuff, same information is there, and we'll be building on that more so on this one than we were in the past. It's got a few little neat additional gadgets on there, but that is up. Go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It's a big deal, when you're working on stuff and you finally, kind of a one-man band, a one-man show here. So when things get done like that, it can be a big milestone. But today we are talking about, we're actually going to solve a problem on this show today, right? And it's the big one. I can't fix inflation for you directly. Like, I can't wave my magic wand and make it go away. I have already waved my magic wand as much as I can to get you the best interest rates that I can. I'm using the best strategies that I've got based on my 32 years of experience. And I'm not discounting any of that or, making it insignificant by any means. Mm-hmm. But there is a limit to what it can do, right? And so we demonstrated that the end of this last segment. We took an average sale price of $400,000, which is where we're at in St. Charles County right now, $320,000 loan, using current rates from this past week, the market at 6.5% or higher, likely higher depending on who you're quoting from. If you end up with big box retail mortgage lender, it's going to be higher than that. I'm given the benefit of the doubt because I don't need to make the problem even larger. This will illustrate sufficiently the point that I'm trying to get across. But even me being so much lower on the interest rate still only affects the payment by $100. It's enough to make a decision. It's a better borrowing decision to make. However, it's not enough to bridge the affordability gap, right? So if you were there saying, well, gosh, I wish I would have bought last year, if I could get that 3%, 4%, even 5% would be better. Experts estimate, take that for what it's worth, a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. Believe that if mortgage rates were down around closer to 5 than 7, where they're at now, that the real estate market would be doing much better than it is. Like, more people would be willing to let go of their 3 to, some people still have 4s out there. They'd be more willing to let go of that to move into the new one. You'd have more people that would become affordable so they could buy, and that would really change things. So to be conservative, to really make the point, to drill it home, I assumed lower than that at 4, right? So if you could get a 4, that would really open the market up, right? If 5 opens it up enough to move the needle, 4 ought to do even more. So if that same purchase happens at 4%, it's $500 less. It's than the market. It's $400 less than where I'm at, but that's still too big for the ordinary average everyday person. So we got to find a way to bridge that $400 gap, because if I can make that $400 gap go away somehow, some way, right? Now, I've already alluded to, I can't make the payment go down anymore. But what if I could give you more money to make that with, right? So if you had more cash flow, so you could go out and you could try to negotiate a better deal on the house, but good luck with that. You could put more money down, but that's just more money. If you had more money, you probably wouldn't have an affordability problem to begin with, correct? Get a better rate. Well, we just talked about interest rates. A longer term, we're already at 30. Sure, you could go interest only. You'd shave a little bit. you would shave a little bit off of that, but one, interest-only loans aren't prevalent today like they were 15 years ago. You can still find them, though. They're going to kind of be frowned upon just because, and not me personally, I happen to be a big believer in them, financially speaking. They're a great tool. But they don't solve a problem by themselves. They also run the risk, and this is why they're frowned upon, is because they run the risk of creating a whole new problem, which is you don't build any equity from your payments. And equity is what provides you that cushion moving forward, that if something were to go wrong down the road, you would be able to sell the house and get out, and there's enough equity in the property to pay a real estate, to pay some costs, to, do those kinds of things. You could take a discount on the sale price to move it quickly or whatever. It creates some liquidity there. If you're maxed out, it creates issues. Might end up being a short sale or something like that if property values were to go down, or if you didn't pay and those payments, unpaid payments and interest and penalties, and that started to stack up and actually raise the balance instead of it just being flat. But longer term's not going to solve that problem either. So I started thinking about this, like maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe we're trying to solve the wrong problem. So a big tenet of the show, right, is to kind of take a step back from the home buying transaction and look at how it works within your entire financial picture, not just the home buying transaction by itself. So what does that mean? Well, in this case, we'll get you the best rate we can. You go negotiate the best price that you can. We'll structure this the best way we can to get you the lowest payment that we can. Then within your whole financial picture, maybe there's things we can do to give you more cash flow with which to make that optimized payment, if that optimized payment doesn't create enough affordability for you. So in this case, we're trying to cover that $400. Well, the easiest way to go look at this is going to be debt, your other debt. Okay. If you don't have any other debt, I get it. You probably may not have an affordability issue, though. This tends to be more of a problem with people who have other debt. Like if you don't have any other debt and the mortgage payment that you're looking at is too high, you might be trying to buy too much house, or you might not have enough income compared to what you're trying to buy. So that would be not in 100% of the cases, but that might be a clue that you might need to talk to somebody or revisit some of those things. All right. But for the vast majority of people, I don't mean a mountain of debt. In fact, the example that we're going to use here is a relatively small amount of debt, just $10,000. All right. By the way, when it comes to, and we'll do this in the context of credit card debt. By the way, we just hit a new outstanding debt record on amount of outstanding debt on credit cards. Trillion with a T.
I heard that the other day.
Yeah, not B, not billions.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars, right? So usually you only hear trillions when we're talking about the national debt, right? 31, we'll round it off, 31 trillion now. And that sounds like a mountain, right? Well, if you add up all the outstanding credit card debt, it adds up to $1 trillion now. Not 31, I get it, but I mean, gee whiz, that's, it wasn't too long ago that was the national debt, right? So
obviously a lot of folks and families are having trouble making ends meet, and they're putting stuff on their charge cards that they probably shouldn't be normally doing, but now they are, and now
it's an effect of inflation.
Yes.
Right? So the prices are going up. People's wages aren't going up commensurate with the amount the prices are going up. So on a net basis, people are getting poorer. But when this is the stuff that the Fed looks at, right? So they're meeting and looking at things, and they're talking about stuff. This is some of the stuff that, that they're looking at is so when it comes to consumer spending, the consumer is still spending, we must still be good, right? But, well, where is it coming from? because the price on everything is going up. Oh, our GDP is going up. Like people are spending more money, companies are making more money and whatever. Well, yeah, of course they are, because we have inflation, right? Once you go net inflation out of that, and I don't know if it turns negative or what, but the point is that when you have inflation is something that drives those things, right? So a healthy company is a company that sees increasing revenues over time. That could purely just come from inflation. Now, that's not good if it does, but it could. And that's what people who evaluate those kinds of things, like the Fed, that's what they're looking at. Okay, but it's got to go somewhere. So it goes on a credit card. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're carrying these balances over long periods of time and things like that. But and I looked. It's hard to really pin down what the average is, because it depends on how you calculate it, right? But it's somewhere between 10 and 15,000, depending on the source you look at, how they calculated it, and then some of the way the calculations work out. So I just took 10,000 on the low side of that. A typical interest rate today is 24%. Holy cow, 24%. Ooh. Like, what? I thought credit cards were like only 18. Right? Well, they were only 18, except it's not only 18, because that's a high interest rate by itself. But every time the Fed hikes, right? So they've hiked somewhere in the neighborhood of 6% since over the last year and a half. Every time that goes up 1%, the interest rate on your credit card goes up 1%. Well, the Fed doesn't control credit card interest rates, right? They control a different rate that the prime rate is based off of. The prime rate is what your credit card company looks at. If you read all that fine print in that 47,000-page document that nobody ever read, you just checked the box and moved on so you can get your card and go use it. That's what it says in there, all right? It's prime plus whatever, prime plus 12, prime plus 15 or whatever. So your credit card might have been at 15, now it's at 21. It might have been at 18, now it's 24. What if it was at 20 before? Now it's 26, 27. Who knows what it is?
I'll give you a perfect example. We were talking about this a couple days ago on the morning show with Mike Ferguson, and Mike said that he and his wife Rachel were checking through some stuff, looking through their bills, pulled up some of the credit card information that they had, and they were shocked to see that, yeah, they were paying 24%. They thought that they were around 17 or 18, and then realized, no, this is at 24.
Well, last time they looked, they probably were.
Yes.
Because, most people don't dwell and look on this stuff, right? Unless you are living on the edge and you're forced to, like, you're in your bank account every day trying to make, at some point in our lives, most of us have probably been in that case. But normal, average, everyday people don't live in their bank account. They're not studying their statements. I don't know whether you should do that or shouldn't. That's not the point. The point is that they don't. So, yeah, we know rates are going up, but we don't make the connection logically in our brain like, oh, the Fed just hiked another quarter. Oh, my credit card interest rate's going to go up a quarter. That means my interest on my card is going to go up. Well, maybe not. It depends on what my average daily balance was.
Yeah,
my average daily balance is creeping up also, because when I go to the gas station, what used to be $35 is now $36.50. And when I go to the grocery store and I fill that cart, and it used to be $200, now it's $209, or $214, and I've already switched what I'm buying. And, when these other things that you do, here's, Netflix gone up, Hulu and ESPN gone up, AT&T, Spectrum, wherever, Verizon, your phone, your mobile phone bills, all this stuff, it's all gone up a little bit.
And if you don't make any cuts, you realize, whoa, right, we've got some pretty hefty bills.
If something used to be $14.99 and it goes to $16.99, like I don't live my life like that. Like it's $2. Like I can't even. I wish I hadn't even read that, right? Because now it's space in my brain, and I would have rather put something else there, But when what's $2? What's $2 on $15, it's 7%, something like that. Well, that's a 7% increase. It's got to come from somewhere. So it's $2 there, and it's $3 over here, and it's $5 there, and it's 10 over here, and
it adds up.
Yeah, it adds up. It's the boiling of the frog. That's inflation. All right, that's the effect of that. So, on that $10,000, that 24% interest, that's going to work out to be a $300 a month payment. Okay, it's $200 in interest. So you take the interest rate divided by 12. 24 divided by 12 is 2. Add 1 to it for 3. That's 3% of the outstanding balance that they assess over the course of the month. And we're assuming that to be $10,000 here. So 3% of that is $300. 2% of that is interest. So $200 of interest, $100 is going to pay down the balance. If you just paid that credit card off that way, paying the interest plus 1% of the outstanding balance, it would last for 4.5 years. And you would pay $6,600 in interest on that $10,000 or 66%. Okay. By the way, if you were to extrapolate those out on a mortgage loan, people will go crazy. Like, oh my God, I can't believe charge me all that interest. But on a credit card, it's smaller numbers. You don't really notice it so much, or it doesn't have the same. It doesn't carry.
Does have the same impact
because you don't think of your credit card the same way that you think of your mortgage loan in like terms of permanence. It's just this fleeting thing. I'll pay it off. We're going to get the bonus. We're going to do that. We're going to sell some stuff in the basement. We're going to get a part-time or whatever the case is. And that, that'll go away. And for some, and that's how it normally happens. Okay. So, but that's still $300 a month out of your budget. If we were to look at auto loans, same deal, average loan amount, $22,000, average payment, $500 to $700 a month, interest rates, 5.5 or 5 to 9%, depending on whether it's a new car or used car. These are wild average, just amorphous numbers, just people out there paying 19%. Some people got 0% on their factory deal from GM or whatever. So the average of that is all this. But I put this there to put the disconnect between the large payment, right? So now we're up to $500 to $700. By the way, you can have a car and not have a payment, right? Okay, well, some people haven't made that connection yet. After the car pays off, you could keep the car and not get a new. Okay,
exactly.
Well, I mean, if you're in the category of needing affordability or needing payment relief, or in that thing where you're having trouble making ends meet, so it's going on credit cards and that, I mean, you have to cut somewhere. You have to do something that you can. Point is that this is an easy way to do that. You don't necessarily have an affordability problem. What you have is an affordability problem in the context of your overall cash flow. So if we can improve your overall cash flow by $400, so $10,000 in credit cards, if you have $15,000 in credit cards, now it's not $300, it's $450. That same 3%. If you have, even on the low side, if you have a car payment, that's $500. Maybe you have both of those. That's another $1,000. If we could make that go away, right? Now, not magic wand, click it, not talking about debt negotiation or bankruptcy or anything like that. If we can make that go away, you would have more money to do other things with.
Definitely.
Perhaps afford that house that you need or want, or be able to make better decisions with that money. So that's what we're going to jump into. That's the problem. That's the context. The process is going to come up next here in a minute. So let's go to break, and we'll jump into that when we come back.
We'll take a quick break here. You're listening to HomeWise. That's Michael Midget. I'm Stal Ponticus, and we will be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to HomeWise. I'm Stal Ponticus with the host and creator of the show, Michael Midget. We're in the middle of our conversation here. Michael, continue with your in-depth look at all these payments.
All right. I know. If you're getting pains in your stomach right now, you're either hungry or you've been listening to this too long. Because, I mean, it gives you, there is a visceral, when you talk about debt with people, and it happens to me because I do it every day. I sort of live it along with them because, like I said, when I approach this the same way that I would approach it if I were doing this for myself, or the way that I would want to be treated if the tables were turned and I was you and you were me.
Exactly.
Or if I was dealing with a family member or whatever, right? So I just find that I can do a better job for you if I actually, in my mind, assume your shoes and, think of it in that sense. So all of these things that I'm talking about are all from experience. I didn't read a book. I didn't think it up last night. It's like things that I have, a compilation of real situations, real conversations I've had with people, things I've had people say to me, things I've experienced personally over all of these years, baked together to produce this very simple. Don't let the simplicity of it discount its value in this. I find that the simplest, easiest, straightforward things are sometimes the most valuable because you can get it done. If it's too hard, it's too complicated, you might not even attempt it, right? You may not have enough confidence or whatever. So in some cases, simple is easy. There are things you can do to make this more powerful. It can be paired with other strategies and things, but this is the main engine of the debt elimination system that I had created many years ago. Used to be the sole focus of my business, and that. So we're talking about home affordability. We need to bridge that $400 affordability gap, and we can likely do it if we deal with some of the other debt that you likely have. The debt that doesn't have to be causing you a problem, right? Because I think for most people out there, a $300 payment, we don't want it, but it isn't going to force you into bankruptcy, especially, if you're looking for a house and you're moving and you're that close. It's, we're not talking about being affordable to the point where I can qualify you or I can't qualify you. We're talking about, the more it's too much. We shouldn't be buying that, or we shouldn't be committing to that over time for whatever reason. Okay. This is bridging that gap to bring this down back into a comfort zone. Now it works for all the other things because it's just numbers, but I'm putting this in perspective for you. You've heard me talk about before, one of the main strategies I have is the debt consolidation purchase. Okay. So if you were looking at, in this particular case here, instead of putting down 20%, I would recommend looking at or considering taking $10,000 of that 20% or 15 or whatever the case is on whatever amount of debt or however much debt you have, and using some of that down payment money to pay off that debt instead of putting down to take a lower payment on the mortgage. Essentially what you're doing is you are consolidating that debt, consumer debt, into the new mortgage. Not directly, but essentially if we were to break this down to a spreadsheet level, I could show you where'd that debt go? We paid it off, but we took a larger loan over here, so it didn't disappear, right? Some people would have you think that you accomplished something by doing that. Well, you did. It just make you think you accomplished something that you actually didn't accomplish, which is make debt disappear. All we did was transfer it, like 3-card Monte thing, right? So don't fall for that. But let's shine a light on what actually did happen. Is you do not have the payment associated with those, and we'll just use credit cards, for example, to keep the terminology simple. You don't have the payments associated with the credit cards anymore, but you have a larger payment on the mortgage than you would have had otherwise. The payment on the credit cards was likely more than the increase payment on the new mortgage, so you have a net. Now you have a net positive. Now it's not going to be the full amount of the credit cards making a way to bridge that whole gap, but and everybody is going to be different in this, but that's the general idea. Is there's a net benefit effect to doing that. All right. that might solve your problem all by itself, all right? But if it doesn't, or if you need more, or if you're not in a position to put down a smaller down payment for whatever reason, like maybe you were putting down the minimum to begin with, and that's okay. There is another, another approach to this. All right. So, by the way, let me just stick in here real quick. Common approaches that sound good, but don't work. Right. So from experience, 0% balance transfers on credit cards, they don't work. They don't eliminate debt. 4% personal loans, consumer credit counseling, the debt negotiation company, they sound like loans, but most of them are this other thing that wrecks your credit, or bankruptcy, right? None of these work, right? Now, they're not necessarily bad things in and of themselves, other than the debt negotiation thing, which I just said. They could be and can work as part of a solution, but they're not the solution themselves. They're just tools, all right? They can be used to create something I call margin, right? So what is margin, all right? Margin is when you pay more on a debt than what is owed on the debt, all right? So let's back up a second, right? So step number one in the system is going to be to create margin. Because the only way to pay off debt, eliminate debt, is to pay it back. You got to pay it back. I mean, truly pay it back, not just transfer it or shift it or whatever, but to make it disappear, to actually increase personal wealth. It's got to be paid back. We just want to pay it back with as few dollars as possible. The way you do that is to prepay it. You prepay it using, making payments on it, as long as they're not interest-only payments. But we accelerate, but that happens slowly, or too slowly for most people. When you create margin, you accelerate that process. But that's step one, but there's a step zero that's important here. And it's stop digging, right? So a key piece of this is you got to stop using the credit cards. You got to stop pyramiding the debt. You got to stop taking out more debt. And you need to make enough to at least cover your bills. Ideally, you actually spend less than you make. By the way, I don't have a system for people that spend more than they make. I don't think that system exists. I mean, it kind of defies the laws of, economics there and that. And, I can't fix that. You have a different problem, different person, different whole different thing. I can refer you to somebody for that, but that's, it's important to know what you can.
Oh yeah,
what you can and can't do.
I bet when you're having that conversation with a client and that situation comes up, you feel like you want to put a stop sign up. Just stop spending more than you're bringing in.
Yeah, and it,
to try and help
right, and
realize.
So, and it's not. I mean, that sounds cold, and that's not where the conversation starts.
No, I understand.
That's step zero. So it's that when I said I assume the shoes of the person, I'm kind of making this determination to kind of figure out what I think the answers are. Then I'll ask questions to make, to confirm in that. And there's a nice way to, a nice constructive way to put it out there. But say, so I'm not having that conversation. I'm talking to you today. Like this, you got to stop digging first, right? So that's step zero. Step two, our step one is to create margin. All right. So margin, debt payment made minus debt payment required. The overage is called margin. So in our credit card example, the minimum payment was $300, $200 of interest. There was $100 of principal built into that. If we put another $100 of margin with that, right? So just $100, right? So where do you get that $100 from? Well, you might get that $100 from doing a debt consolidation purchase. All right. So that might be the spread between the reduction from the payment there. Maybe you got a home equity line of credit and you consolidated some debt together and you were able to reduce the monthly payment, get that monthly savings up to $100. But you didn't have enough home equity line or enough equity there to pay off all the credit cards. So now we're going to work on the ones that were left over. Okay. Or Maybe you just decided that you were going to change where you grocery shop. I was going to do a better job of shopping my insurance. I'm going to appeal my real estate taxes. I'm going to wait for Tuesday afternoon gas, you know what I mean? And you're going to whittle away at this thing, and you're going to stop hitting Starbucks, the Latte Factor. By the way, a Latte Factor whole $1 million fortune book series, and that was built on $100 a month. Figuring out how to find that $100, that were the keys to the kingdom for personal wealth. There you go. I just saved you years of reading books.
Reduce your spending by $100 a month.
Well, that's really kind of what it amounted.
That makes sense.
What it amounted to.
Mm-hmm.
My whole career was built on do that and see what I can manufacture out of rearranging the finances. So that's the debt consolidations, built the debt elimination plans. But the underlying core engine of what that debt elimination piece is this simple 3-step process. All right. You got to create that margin. When you put that extra $100 with it, you just doubled that principal prepayment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Instead of paying off in 4.5 years, it now pays off in 3 years. Instead of paying $6,600 in interest, I think it was, it brings it down to $4,000 of interest. So you save $2,600 of interest, right? Sounds great. And it is great. Okay. It's a good investment to make when you look at it that way. By the way, what ROI are you getting on it? You're getting 24% because you're paying off 24% credit card.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's good. That's good, smart thing to do. But that's not the keys to the kingdom. Okay. That's not where the focus is. All right. Where the focus should be, it doesn't change what actually happened, but until you understand what you really did, it's hard to take advantage of it and get super motivated about it. When that debt goes away, when you pay that credit card off, how much were we paying on that credit card per month? Well, we were paying $300 because that was the minimum payment. We were also paying an extra $100 because we built up $100 of our own margin. Well, now we have a $400 margin instead of a $100 margin because we don't have that payment anymore. What are you going to do with that $400? What are you going to do with that $400? That's the key right there. Okay. So you have more debts, you move on to the next debt. And now you start plowing into it, just like you started with the 100, except now you have 400. So what happens? It goes faster, right? It's more power, right? Well, this is a debt snowball Dave Ramsey talks about. My system was called debt meltdown. I got a new name for it now, but there's more to it. So we're not going to get into that. It's the scope of it is beyond what we're talking about here, but it's more comprehensive. But this is a great primer for that. This is a great starting point. So great. Now you have an extra $400 and we can start plowing into another debt. Maybe you start working on that car loan. Maybe you started off with the car loan. It depends on maybe you were already 3 years into a 4-year car loan. You had a $700 a month payment. So you owed less than $10,000. And instead of, it made more sense to plow into that than it did the credit card first. Because when I get that paid off, now I have an extra $700. So close, now $800.
Mm-hmm.
And that credit card's going to go faster than 3 years. Irregardless of how much interest I saved, it's not about saving interest. You don't look at it that way, all right? You don't evaluate it that way. That's not the judge. The judge is how quickly you can get it paid off. Because you're trying to free up additional margin, because that's what really accelerates this process. By the way, that's the other thing that you did by accelerating that other debt. Even though, yeah, you saved $2,600, you freed up $400 a month. You did that 1.5 years sooner. That means you get to start using that $400 for its next best and highest use purpose 1.5 years sooner. And when it comes to finances, when it comes to personal finances, that is the key, is how quickly you can do this stuff over time. So step 3 is simply just rinse and repeat. And if you don't have any debt left after that, you can start chipping away at the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's how you get mortgages. You know, you hear the things, if you watch a lot of YouTube or late night TV or whatever, and you'll see people, you can pay off your 30-year mortgage in 4 years, 5 years. Sounds like BS, right? Well, mathematically, it's possible. And this this is how you do that. So hopefully hopefully it's directly applicable to you. If it's not directly applicable to you, it's probably directly applicable to somebody you know, because everybody knows somebody who's buying a house. Everybody's got to live somewhere. And if not that, everybody has a mortgage. Or if you don't have a mortgage or debt or whatever, this is a universal concept, right? So HomeWiseRadio.com, by the way, newly redesigned. If you missed that note earlier, go check it out. Mortgage websites, GoShelter.com. You can reach me there. If you want to call me or text me direct, 314-275-0314.
That's Michael Midget. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of HomeWise. And hopefully we have given you some really important information here to help you on a daily basis. I'm Stal Ponticus, and on behalf of Michael Midget, thanks for joining us for the show. Hope you join us again next week for another edition of HomeWise.
Take care.
Loans and loan information provided by Shelter Mortgage, Inc. Visit us at GoShelter.com and MLS number 192609. A Missouri residential mortgage licensee and equal housing lender. Call 888-497-2558 for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.